Hi there. Hello, and welcome to Draw With Me. I'm Danny Gregory, and I want to jump right into this, okay? We are going to jump right in. After looking at those fantastic hats, and the actual idea was collections, so that's why there were other things in there too, shells and shirts and stuff. But the whole idea was to focus on series. But anyway, before I get ahead of myself or behind myself, I want to give you an assignment right now, which is today we are each going to be drawing our own thing, and that thing is something that is about nature. Okay, so it could be a house plant that you have that you could draw. It could be a pet. It could be a seashell that you found last summer or 2 summers ago, whenever you last went to the beach. It could be anything that is a natural thing that we can study. Because today we're going to be focusing on nature journaling. And if that's something you've never done before, I promise you it will be fun and interesting. If it's something you've done and been missing doing, we're going to be doing it. And we're going to talk about it. And I'm going to give you some ideas. And so I want you to, right off the bat, go and figure out what your subject is going to be. Because I have mine. Here's mine. It's a little jalapeno that I've been growing, and he's doing very well, and I want to study him. So this is going to be mine. You can't have him. So you have to find your own subject today, all right? And I'm really interested to see what it is that you come up with and how it is that you study it, because that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be studying our piece of nature, okay? So I'm going to give you a minute or two to go and find it. Meanwhile, I'm going to have a sip of good, high-quality Sketchbook School coffee. And I'm also going to tell you briefly a couple of announcements. I'm not going to tell you too much stuff today, but I am going to tell you that I'm really excited because in addition to Hahnemühle, which is, as you know, the German paper manufacturer that has been sponsoring Draw With Me for the last, it's about a month and a half now. And by the way, Hahnemühle, Carol at Hahnemühle got in touch with me and said, it's actually Rooster Mill, Hahnemühle. But it turns out, although Hahnemühle has been around since the 16th century, I think that's what it is, 500 years or so. Despite that, it was named after one of the guys who ran the mill at one point, whose name was Hana, or Rooster, and it became his mill. So I don't know that there are actually any roosters available, but yes. So you've got all kinds of things. Grab a rock, the sky. You know what you could even do? Your hand. The back of your hand is a viable option. You are part of nature, and you could be studying that. But there's all kinds of things that you could be studying. So anyway, Hahnemühle, in addition to Hahnemühle, we've been joined by another sponsor, and this kind of gives me chills like it did when Hahnemühle came on board. We have an incredible new opportunity to work with a fantastic company, Winsor & Newton. Winsor & Newton is, to me, the cream of the crop, the ne plus ultra, the founding kind of member of the art supply world. Hahnemühle is, one of the founding paper manufacturers, but Winsor & Newton, watercolors, ink, pens, pencils, markers, gouache, all the stuff that I love they make. And I've been using their products for years, so to have them come on is really exciting. And what does it mean that they're going to be our sponsor? Well, one of the things it means is that we're going to get a bunch of art supplies to try out. And, that is, of course, very exciting. And I'm going to be talking about their stuff as I use it, because there's a lot of new products that they've come out with, and I'm interested in learning about them. So they've sent me a care package. I've yet to unbundle it, and Twiggy and I will be making a video about that soon. And I'm just really, I don't know. This sort of completes the Draw With Me kind of picture that I'd always fantasized about, which is having paper and art supplies and sketchbooks coming from amazing companies that I could share with you. So that is pretty cool, and I'm excited about it too. So, all right, so that's that. And so meanwhile, have you figured out what you're going to draw? What else? I want to see what other kinds of things you have out there. Cynthia has white peonies on the table, but we're not just going to draw them, Cynthia. So that's a point I want to make to you. This is not drawing a still life. This is nature journaling, which is a different thing. In fact, I want to bring up the master, the founding father, in a way, of sketchbooking, the founding father of really illustrated journaling and nature journaling and all kinds of things, not to mention all the other things he accomplished, Leonardo Da Vinci. Right? You don't really think of him as a sketchbook keeper, but of course, his journals, his notebooks, they call them, those are sketchbooks. It's a sketchbook, the Codex. It is, he was a master of drawing, certainly, and painting. But also, he was endlessly fascinated by the world around him, and he used drawing as a way of studying it. And if you look through the pages of his sketchbooks, you see how he's studying. This is not a drawing of a plant. This is a study of it. And that's a very different story, right? He's studying the movement of the leaves. He is going in and studying it in detail. How are these things put together? How do they work? And that's a really important phenomenon that I want to talk about today, because, he studied how waterfalls worked, how they cascaded, and how water moved, which is incredibly interesting and difficult thing to do if you've ever done it. I spent a summer sitting at the beach drawing waves. It's really hard. The waves repeat and repeat and repeat, but unless you're taking photographs of them, it's really hard to study their movement, and drawing and painting are a great way of doing that. All kinds of animals and wildlife that he, I guess, would bring into his studio and study. How's a crab put together? How does it move? All those kinds of things are fascinating. And even domestic animals, like this is his studies of cats. Just seeing how do they behave, how do they move, how do their bodies get put together. These are all things that we can learn from drawing. And that is, to me, one of the most interesting and important aspects of drawing, is not just making pretty art that you can hang on the wall or that you can post on Instagram. Sure, that's part of it. But the thing that drawing has meant to me, more than anything else, is a way to engage with the world, to connect to what's around me, to live at present in the moment, to see what is going on in my life. We have so many things that distract us, so many things that take us away, right? We have, these devices that we carry around with us that are always looking to take us away from where we are. And our sketchbooks allow us to say, no, I want to be here now. I want to draw what's in front of me, and I want to understand it. Not just to master the techniques, not just to figure out how to draw it, but use drawing as a way of looking and understanding and really taking something apart into its components and seeing it. So I want to take my little jalapeno friend here, and I want to understand it. He's a fairly new plant, obviously. Haven't been growing him for very long, a few weeks. But I want to see, I don't really understand him. I'm waiting for jalapenos to come out. But is he indicating that there are going to be jalapenos? What are the things that he's doing? How do these different leaves work? How is he put together? Those are the things I want to think about. So let's think about how do these pieces come together? How do the thing that you're going to study, if you're going to study your cat, it doesn't necessarily have to be how your cat is constructed, but it could be things about your cat you maybe never stopped to notice before. In part the movement, but also, how is your cat's spine functioning? Cat spines are really interesting, right? They're really fluid. How does the cat's paw come together? How does the fur work? What do their eyes look like when you look at them intensely? Their noses. So we want to study it like Da Vinci, right? We want to study it like there's so many great nature journalers, people like Hannah Hinkman or Richard Bell, even going back to the Victorians. There were so many great ones, or Edwardians. You might have heard of is it called Sketchbook of a Country Lady? Diary of a Country Lady, Edith Holden. Really great stuff where she really dove deep and really analyzed nature around her to understand it through drawings and watercolors. So that's what we're going to do. So you've got your thing, milkweed flamingos. Interesting. You have flamingos. Do you own flamingos? I mean, if you need to, go and get a photograph. If you're really at your wit's end, I'm not sure if that's going to do it for you, because you may not be able to get that deep into it, but maybe you can. I'm not sure. King python. Interesting. Spider plant. Deer. This is a great one. I have a deer skull that we found on the mountain, so I love that. Studying a deer skull. How do the pieces fit together? What could you tell about what the deer looked like and how it worked? So, all right, so check out all this stuff. Lisa brings out John Muir Laws. John Muir Laws is a brilliant illustrated nature journaler. In fact, he's going to be, I was just talking to him last week, because last week was actually Nature Journaling Week. I missed it, of course, but we're celebrating it afterwards. Grandma Smith has a nesting set of mourning doves on the balcony. That's a great one to study, Grandma. That's a really great opportunity to study how a nest is put together, what's going on in the nest, all these kinds of things. We could spend a lot of time doing that. So, all right. So I see you guys are getting into it. So let's start. Let's start doing this, and then we will see where it goes. All right. So I'm going to be using this Hanamulla paper. It's bamboo paper, and it is from Mixed Media. So I can use anything on it. I have a lot of stuff here that I want to use. I have all this ink that I have sitting around, calligraphy ink, different colors. This is all Winsor Newton stuff. I have fine liners that I'm going to be using. I have different kinds of markers that I could be using, and I have lots of different colors of those, so that's cool. And I have watercolors too. So I have all kinds of stuff, and we'll see. I don't know what I'm going to be using. I might not end up using anything. We'll see. See how what because I'm not doing it to make a pretty picture. I'm doing it to understand. So, color might come into play if I'm really trying to capture the color of one leaf versus another. So when I look at my little guy here, I notice that there are, his leaves are, for instance, lighter on the tips and darker at the top. Or I notice that the newer shoots that are coming off the main trunk are very light in the middle. I don't really know why. They seem to be sort of translucent, whereas this part is darker. Maybe I want to go out and do some research and find out, how is it that he's working? He's also living in water. He's growing hydroponically, so he has lots of very fine shoots coming out of the bottom. So that's interesting to notice. And he has, right now, he has 4 main sort of stems that are coming up. And I don't really know why. I don't know if it's possible that there's more than one seed that germinated. I don't know. And so this is quite a lot I don't know about him. And then he has these little leaves that are coming out here. I don't necessarily sense anything yet about peppers. And that's your job, man. I want some damn jalapeno peppers. That was my whole reason to take as much trouble as I have in looking after you. So you better produce. But I'll stop threatening him and start drawing him. So let's go back and have a look. So, all right, let me show you from here. So I'm just gonna do a little contour of one of his leaves. I'm just gonna study it really slowly, because this is sort of an interesting another phenomenon that I'm noticing right now is different leaves seem to have different shapes. You know, I guess if you'd asked me, and I'm not very educated in these matters, I would have thought that all the leaves would be sort of in a similar shape, but maybe this is a different point in his development, and therefore I keep calling it a he, which is a bit obnoxious, but I think of him as Dr. Pepper or Mr. Pepper. So, all right, so this is how he comes down and joins there with the main stem. And that stem has a bit of a bend to it before it goes down. And then the stem itself is thicker, so it's coming up here. And now I'm encountering another shoot. So now I'm thinking to myself, is this the way it always works? Do leaves always come in pairs like this? Like one off to one side, one off to the other? Maybe. Maybe that helps to keep the plant balanced, you know, physically balanced. Like it might bend too much in one direction or another if, in fact, those leaves were pulling it all in one direction. I don't know. I'm not a botanist, but I play one on YouTube. Okay, and then I see that, so now what else am I going to notice about him? I'm going to notice that, what's the distance, like how long did he have to grow before he produced another stem? See, I'm making it thicker, but it's not actually getting thicker. So, you know, again, this is about drawing, yes, but it's really also about looking and seeing. So, you know, I look and I see that he's got one. So my theory that I just came up with, which is that they're balanced, isn't actually true, because in fact the next leaf that comes out much lower than the one above it. So that's not true at all. Theory number one, destroyed. So, all right, and now, this is one of the reasons I didn't want to do this from photograph, because, you know, it's much more interesting to look around him and to close my eye. And when I close my eye, I see it from different perspectives. So there are leaves that are covering and blocking other leaves, but now when I close one of my eyes, it becomes clearer. So now I'm drawing what is the second largest leaf here on the plant. And this big leaf here is a chance to really look at, like, what is this leaf made of? So maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to a different fine liner. So this is an 08, and now I'm switching to an 03. Because I want to get finer with my... It's kind of like putting in a different lens into my microscope, is to look at, like, what is the construction of this? So, of course, there's that main sort of backbone of the leaf, and then there's these things that are coming off it. Very fine one there. Another one's coming down here and here. So these, I guess, are the kind of veins that the plant uses to feed the various parts of the leaf, I guess. Again, I spent a lot of time like screwing around in 9th grade biology. So, I imagine there's a lot of you in the audience who are like, what is up with this guy? Doesn't he know basic biology? This is moving the chlorophyll around? I don't know. I'm going to come up with some nonsense to explain it. So, you know, but then if we wanted to, okay, so those are basically the arteries of this leaf. I don't need to do this with all the leaves, you know. I noticed that so now what I could do is I could start making little observations, and maybe I'll come back and do that in a minute, where I can actually start taking notes and writing stuff about what I'm seeing. So maybe what my kind of creative visual decision is going to be is that I'm going to make this one leaf kind of stand in for all of the big leaves, and then all the other leaves are just going to be contour drawings of the edges of the leaf. I'm not going to necessarily go in and do the details on all of them because I don't need to. I've kind of learned a fair amount about big leaves from that one leaf, and so I don't need to go in and study the others. But what I am interested in here is this little tiny leaf that's come out here at the very top of the plant. And so I think I'm going to draw him in more detail, and then so I can sort of do a study of like, well, what does a brand new leaf look like, or what's going on with it. Now, you might say to yourself, I really don't care that much about leaves and stuff. I just want to draw manga. Are you saying that to yourself? I hope you're not. It's kind of obnoxious, but maybe you are. And who am I to judge? But if you are, you might say, why do I care about this? Well, there's a number of reasons. One, whatever it is you want to draw, if you want to draw manga, you want to draw things entirely from your imagination, or you want to draw just people, I just want to draw portraits, I don't really care. These same things that we're doing here with this leaf are going to apply. How? Well, how can you draw things from your imagination if you don't have any kind of a reference at all? Yeah, you could just draw abstract blobs, I guess. But if you want to draw things that seem like they could be, right? You want to draw Superman, it's still a man. So you have to understand how it's put together. And so the skills that you can develop by studying nature, by keeping a journal of your encounters with the world, can all feed into any kind of drawing that you want to do, because they're about enhancing your powers of observation. And even if you need to apply them to things in your imagination, your observation will fuel it by giving you ideas on how things are put together. But that's less what I care about, honestly, because I don't really care that much about drawing from my imagination, because the world is so interesting to me and there's so many things already to draw. But a thing that people say to me a lot is, oh, I can't draw X. I can't draw hands. I can't draw buildings. I can't draw people. I can't draw X, Y, or Z. And my feeling is always like, well, what's the difference? There's no particular magic or set of tricks required to draw this jalapeno versus drawing, anything, fighter jet. Anything you want to draw kind of comes down to the same skill set, which is careful observation. That isn't to say that you can't use your imagination, but I wouldn't say you should use your imagination because you can't be bothered to spend a little time observing, because it's in the slowing down that we gain control. And when we have control, we can make choices. So this kind of thing forces you, particularly if you're not talking on YouTube while you're doing it, but it forces you to really observe and slow down. And that is essential for any kind of drawing that you want to do. And the kind of drawing that actually requires it the most, in a sort of a strange way, is drawing that is fast. If you want to draw somebody moving, you have to have really good observational skills. So you might have to draw quickly to draw that. But you won't be able to if you haven't spent time studying how people move, studying how their anatomy serves them when they're moving, understanding their balance, all these things that come from careful observation and study. So that's, to some extent, Da Vinci was such an incredible draftsman because he was able to draw anything and spent so much time drawing all these things. And he also drew from his imagination because he was also a great inventor. Right? He invented a lot of weapons for his various bosses who were waging wars, and he came up with all kinds of solutions. But a lot of times, the inventions that he came up with were informed by his study of nature. And certainly, things like flying machines and stuff like that would not have been possible unless he had really been paying attention to how things fly. So yeah, there's some thoughts. So hopefully you are making some progress with yours. Okay, so next what I want to do is I want to add a little bit of color here. I think I'm going to use watercolor. And let's see, I'm not going to get too persnickety about this watercolor, but I do want to try and be reasonably, accurate to what I'm seeing in the colors that I'm using. So I'm going to mix some different shades of green. So I'm going to focus again on these little ones here at the top, because I think that's really where I spent the most time looking and thinking, was here. So I'm going to zoom in, and because I'm noticing, where is the different shades of light and dark here, and possibly why. Like, what does it mean when part of a leaf is dark? It might mean that they're thicker there. That's probably what it means, right? They're thicker. So why are they thicker? Is it for structural reasons? To hold the leaf together, it needs to be heavier in certain places. It's probably something like that, I think. But it also might be that there's more activity going on there. Or it might be that the green of a leaf has something to do with its ability to synthesize light, isn't it, right? I don't know. Help me if you know. I'm making it up. I'm conjecturing. But, that's probably... if you go back and look... Darwin kept a sketchbook. Lewis and Clark, when they first traveled west, they recorded all their findings in sketchbooks. Their whole party did. They sent them back to Thomas Jefferson to validate what they were doing, And then I also noticed that this stem is almost like a purplish color. Purplish at the junctures. I'm not sure again why that is. But it definitely seems like this bigger stem is much darker and is kind of purple. It's losing its translucent quality there. What's that about? Oh, you want to know what this thing is? This device? It's called a water brush. It is a plastic handle that's empty. Let me zoom out so you can see it better. So this is, it contains water inside. And it's a synthetic brush, which is actually pretty good. And what's cool about it is you don't need to stick your brush into water if you don't want to. And you can take it with you anywhere. I literally carry this in my pocket. So I'm walking around with a vial the border. Whoops, let me get back to this guy. So yeah. And then I want to look at my big leaf here, because that has a lot of different greens in it. If you really get close, and I mean, let me show you this guy again so you can see what I'm talking about. But here he is. Oops. Come on. All right, so this is the guy. You can't really see him. Come on. You see that? Dark green, yellow, light green, white, reflections, a lot of stuff going on there. So that's kind of what I'm studying, and I'm going to try and capture some of that in him. So you see, again, if I want to draw or paint a really great painting of a plant, probably the best way to do it is by spending the time to understand how it works. If you don't do that, you'll leave pieces out, or they won't connect in the way that they should. But if you have an understanding of, like, okay, I understand why this is these colors, then you'll be sure that your colors are accurate. And again, all the times that you might have said to yourself, I can't draw this, or I suck, I can't draw, I have no talent. A lot of it just comes down to you haven't spent the time observing, so you don't really know what it is that you are trying to capture. And if you are ill-informed and frankly just wrong about what this thing is and how it comes together, it's likely that your drawing is not going to work. And it doesn't mean that you have to become a PhD in botany to do this, but it certainly means that you need to take time to slow down and look. You don't need to be a mechanic to draw a car. But if you have no idea what a car is, you're going to have to spend a lot of time looking at it to really understand it. And that's why it's also fascinating to take things that you don't know what they are, you don't really understand, like pop the hood on your car and draw the engine sometime. A thing that you may not know exactly how it all comes together. Try it. You'll learn a lot about how your car works just from doing that. But, it's also an interesting way to get a fresh look at things you think you do know well. That's why I like to draw self-portraits. I know my face really well, I think, but then I'll sit down and draw it and go, oh, you know what, there's a lot I don't know about it. And that's, again, part of the fun of all this stuff. And why I just rail on about it doesn't matter if you think you're no good at drawing. That's not the point. The point is to be good at observing, and that only comes with practice. Okay, so as I said, I could keep going on with this. I just want to put a little bit more of this darker color in here. Because then what we can do is we can bring in another way that we have of recording information, which is writing. And we can say, you know what, I'm going to take some notes. You know, you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to use a pen and some ink and make some notes. So, you know, I've noticed that main stem is much darker and not translucent. And in some ways, I don't necessarily want to repeat the information that I'm getting, that I'm recording in drawing. My point is not to do the same thing, but it's maybe to write down some things that I can't necessarily express in the drawing right away. So I might want to take some other notes, like new leaf is very thick. It is, it's much thicker. Or what else am I observing here? This secondary stem is light and fresh. Looks fresh. So yeah, so I could fill this whole thing with, then I'm going to write. I need to write something like to identify this whole thing. So I'm going to say figure XXVI. Because they always have that kind of thing in nature journals and technical books. And then I'm going to write jalapeno. If I want to have fun, I would go and look it up and see what the Latin name for jalapeno is and write that there. So then I'm going to write other observations like no signs of peppers yet. Or I might write maybe I should call this plant Margarita, because frankly that's why I'm growing these things, so we can have jalapeno margaritas. What else? This sort of thing is interesting. And I might use another device. I think I'm going to use this marker to indicate that these things are kind of rounded. I just noticed that, really. It's almost like they're like little pockets that are like little sacks of stuff. Like they're kind of bulging with something. Yeah, so I might want to write that down. Bulging. But with what? And then, of course, a big blob of ink goes there. It doesn't matter. That gives it, I'm going to soak that up because it's going to definitely get in the way at some point. It's going to smear. It's going to get... There we go. All right. I'm sure Charles Darwin, I'm sure even Da Vinci splattered ink sometimes. So, is the marker brush water soluble? That particular one isn't, because that is just a regular Pro marker. But I do have, oh yes, I have this. This is a watercolor marker. And, so thanks for reminding me, because I'm not doing it for the sake of doing it, though. So that's kind of an important thing to remember. I'm not doing it just in order to use this marker, but I'm doing it because it has a purpose. So this green's a little bit darker, but that's cool because I will now blend it in, you see. That's the nice thing about these things is I can blend them because they're essentially watercolors. And I wanted that. See, now I'm getting that sort of difference between the darkness and the lightness that I wanted. Yeah, so those markers are a way of adding just a very delicate amount of color if you want, or of filling in a whole area with watercolor, and then also softening it and doing things that you couldn't possibly do with a regular marker. But also, it has this brush tip, but then it also has a thinner kind of more detailed drawing thing. So anyway, now I'm starting to I'm getting excited by this pen, which is not what I want to do. Do not get excited. I want the cold, clear vision of a scientist. So. All right. So that's the beginning of this, but imagine having a sketchbook full of these kinds of observations about stuff, right? Pretty cool. Pretty interesting way of using it. Yeah, so what else? What else can I tell you? I'm just looking at your comments. Claire's asking how the bamboo paper is working. I love this. I got to tell you, the texture of it is really different from watercolor paper. I don't know, it's got texture, but the grain of it is really different than watercolor paper. As you can see, it works really nicely with this watercolor. And it's tight enough so that I can draw on it with a dip pen, or write on it with a dip pen without kind of crazy things happening when the ink starts getting over-absorbed. So, yeah. Rose makes a good point, which is professional grade watercolors. Yeah, I'm using these are professional grade. This is a Winsor Newton field kit, and these are the colors that it comes with, so they're pretty basic. They're not pretty basic. They're basically all I need, so I'm pretty happy. Yes. All right. So let me come back to me. That is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to nature journaling. And that's something I wanted to spend more time with you doing, because we can go outdoors finally. Hopefully you can. And drawing in this way is so interesting. It's such an adventure. Secondly, it helps you to deal with the what should I draw question. Because really, there's so many interesting phenomena to study and to find out about. Thirdly, I think it can make really beautiful images. I think the idea of having a sketchbook with really nice paper full of studies of botany or animal behavior or the weather, it just goes on and on. And how cool that would be. I know, like, for instance, my friend Richard Bell, he wrote this book called Rough Patch. This entire book, full of drawings and watercolors, is about his very small backyard. His backyard is, I couldn't even think of it in terms of acres. It's tiny, but it has so many things growing in it, and he studies. Let me just flip over here briefly to this. It's so many things about how the birds are and how the flowers change and different animals that come in at different points. It just goes on and on. He's a master of that, and his name is Richard Bell, and he has a really cool blog called Yorkshire Nature Journal. Just look up Richard Bell, Yorkshire artist, and you will find your way to him. And he as long as I've known him, which is 20 years, he's been keeping this record of his experiences in nature. So it just goes on, and you don't have to have massive gardens. You could, I did this a lot when I lived in New York City. I could study. I spent a lot of time drawing our pet turtle, drawing house plants. My friend Lapin, during the beginning of the lockdown, instead of doing urban sketching, which he normally does, and drawing planes and cars, he just drew succulents. And he did amazing work just drawing succulent plants. So that was really cool. So there's so many places that you can take nature journaling. So I want to spend some more time doing it. I want to come back to it. Here's the thing. The reason why I haven't done it before is because on the face of it, I just thought, how am I going to do nature journaling sitting at a desk in front of a computer? But I'm going to think it through, and I'm going to figure it out. And I'm going to figure out ways. And if you have any suggestions for how I can do it and still present it to you in a nice way, I'd be eager to have them. But I might just have to go out and just bring some stuff in, and we'll figure it out. But I'm hoping to see the stuff that you did, and I'm also hoping to see a variety of things, because it'll be really interesting to see what nature encounters you've had. And maybe what I'll do next time is I'll announce it in advance. So at the end of one draw with me, I'll say, hey, next week we're going to do nature drawing, so make sure you gather some cool stuff and you bring it in. That'll make it a little bit less of a surprise. So all right, good. Well, thank you for joining me. Oh, before I forget, I'm teaching a workshop day after tomorrow. I've been telling you about it for the last month, but this is kind of the end. You have until like tomorrow afternoon to get in there. And this is the first workshop I've ever taught. It's about this thing, the dip pen, how to draw with it, how to write with it, how it works, how to overcome all the problems that people have when they don't really know what to do with it. And I've spent a long time working with this thing and figuring stuff out and making enormous numbers of mistakes that you can benefit from. So sign up for it. It's priced cheaper than our regular workshops because it's just old me teaching it. I don't have to bring in any other artists. So it's just me, and it's going to be a couple hours, and you go to bit.ly/DannyDip, or just go to sketchbookschool.com and go to the workshops and sign up there. So it's going to be Saturday morning, my time, my Saturday morning at noon Eastern time. So do it and join me. What else did I want to say? Oh yes, I want to see what you're doing. So let me just see. I want you to, if you would like to share it, and I would hope that you would. I would like it if you did. Please put it on social media. Whatever you made today, put it on social media with hashtag #SBSDrawWithMe. Hashtag #SBSDrawWithMe. Facebook, Instagram, we go around, we look at it. If somebody tagged their thing with this, we'll share it next week at the beginning of our next episode. And that's it. Thank you so much for drawing with me. Hope to see you again next time. And thanks again to Hanamula and to Winsor Newton for supporting our endeavors. I'll see you hopefully on Saturday. Yes, that'll be cool. Again, that will be very nice. And I will be honored to teach you what I know. Thank you. See you later.